So I've been going live across all of my Facebook pages, and it's rare that I go live on my YouTube channel, but for today only I'm doing this live because I'm trying to put as many videos out there on my YouTube channels and not just focus on my Facebook pages. But if you do want to head on over to my Facebook pages, then you can go to Coach Marianne Hanson. That's my coaching page. My personal page is Marianne Hanson. My debt support page is called A Debt Free Life, and my business page is NU Journeys Counselling. That's where I'm coming from live on this page. So I want to talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, and I'm not going to go into like loads of detail on this. You can watch the live video over on my page, NU Journeys Counselling, my Facebook page. But I just wanted to talk about it because I don't think I've not seen many videos on this topic or many articles, to be fair, and it's something that affects many people. Recently, in the Therapy Today magazine, which I get every month as a counsellor, it's part of my membership at the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy, there was an article about the amount of women and men who are on the waiting list for counselling because they've suffered from sexual assault. And sexual assault is one of the things that is linked quite highly with post-traumatic stress disorder, because you've been through a trauma. You now have to engage with and interact with lots of people, so the triggers can be quite high, because if you were assaulted by a complete stranger and you may not have even seen their face, the stress levels can be much higher because you're going to be worried and paranoid about walking on the street, paranoid about if the person's still out there, if they've not been caught and arrested. If it was someone you know, then the stress is going to be just as high, but for different reasons, because you probably know that that person isn't going to do it to you again, but it breaks your trust, and then you're going to be worried about being around other people. You might be worried about just trusting the world in general, because of you probably thought this could never happen. So that's why post-traumatic stress disorder is common amongst people who've suffered sexual assault. Other types of PTSD, where it's found often, is in high-stress jobs. So it could be the police, the fire service, soldiers, because they see quite shocking and distressing things, and then they have to come out of the army and then just go into civilian life. And often they can't talk about what they've seen, so it's, it can be quite stressful there. People who've been held at gunpoint, been subject to muggings, car crash, train crash. They might have seen suicide, they might have seen someone being killed or a dead body. There's lots of people actually who are walking around with post-traumatic stress disorder, and they probably haven't been diagnosed with it, and it's only when they get a flashback or when something triggers them and then they respond to that physically and emotionally that they realise, do you know what, I might have PTSD. So this could happen, for example, on bonfire night, if fireworks are going off. Someone who's been in the army or been a soldier might experience, the loud noises and the banging. And some of these fireworks, to be fair, even I feel scared, not scared, but they're so loud. Some of them literally sound like bombs. They don't sound like fireworks. So if you can imagine someone who's been in the army and that has been their day to day, hearing like bombs going off, if they hear fireworks and it triggers them and takes them back to when they were on the battlefield, they can then start to experience panic attacks, fear, distress, stress within their body. Their brain is trying to tell people, you're fine, you're safe, this isn't really happening. But you're not, you're kind of conflicted because the trauma has been buried, so it's coming back up and you don't know what to do about it. So it's a lot of confusion. So how you can deal with it really is for you, first of all, to acknowledge that you're struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder. Years ago, I worked with train drivers. It was one of my very first counselling contracts that I had. I had to work with train drivers I had 6 sessions with them. Someone referred them to me. These were train drivers who were off work because they'd experienced people committing suicide on the train tracks. Some of the train drivers decided they didn't want to go back. to driving a train ever again. Some went back to work, but they were experiencing anxiety and stress. And some were fine, or they felt they were fine, and they said, you know, it's happened, it's nothing I can do anything about. I'm willing to go back to drive the train, but I just want to get, you know, some help so that I can feel stronger within myself. So different experiences are going to affect different people. But one thing is for sure, that when someone struggles, has suffered a trauma, the brain wants to protect you. So at that time, how you might respond then is different to how you might respond weeks, months and years later. So how I see it is that post-traumatic stress disorder affects people days, weeks, months or even years after the event, and they're triggered, and it's usually triggered by physically and emotionally creating a high level of stress, distress or fear. So the two ways that you can probably deal with this, I'm not an expert in this field, but these are the two ways I would say, is that seek professional help. You can either go to your GP or you can go and see a counsellor, maybe someone who's got experience in working with post-traumatic stress disorder, because there are different ways you have to work with someone than, you know, your normal counselling. And the second one is something called a grounding exercise. So this is something when I did brief training on this topic that they taught me about. So when you're in a state of distress, your brain goes into it's like flight or what's it called, fight or flight. So you either hit out at the thing that's attacking you or hurting you or harming you, but in this case it's nothing, because the thing, it's not really there. So if you've been, say, in a domestic violence relationship, or you've been in some sort of trauma, and then you are in the process of having a flashback, the grounding exercise is where you stand completely still and you talk yourself down. You say to yourself, I'm now safe, everything's fine, I'm going to be okay, I'm not in any harm, I'm not in any danger, I'm not being attacked, this situation isn't happening how it was, I am fine. So you have to talk yourself down and ground yourself. Sometimes they say to look around the room, focus on an object so that it shows you are not on the battlefield, you're actually in your living room. Think about ways that you can bring yourself back to the present moment. So that's a really good grounding exercise, but definitely seek help. It's worth talking through and exploring what you've been through so that you can then put it to bed, because suppressing it and never talking about it again only means the triggers are going to continuously come. This isn't not for everyone. Some people can have a traumatic event and they won't struggle with post-traumatic stress disorder. So I hope you found this video useful. Anyone that watched on the live stream, please leave your comments. Tell me what you think. Tell me if you've struggled with this issue yourself. Share this video if you think it will be useful to anyone else. And I'll see you all again soon. Have a great afternoon. Bye.